The series begins with a girl named Young who narrates her story. Young wakes up and goes to the bathroom, only to find a boy named Seal there, startling her. She apologizes and tells us that Seal is her father. We then flash back and learn that Young is an orphan, having lost both her parents 7 years ago. She lives with her younger sister, Dan. Young is on the phone with a friend who offers her a job, but she declines because the salary is too low to cover her and her sister's expenses. Suddenly, she hears her landlord calling and quickly ends the call. She apologizes for the late rent and begs for a 1-month extension, but the landlord only gives her 1 week, warning that she'll be evicted if she doesn't pay. Young is distressed, unsure how she'll manage. On her way to work, Young searches online for a cheaper apartment. She passes by Dan's school and finds her sister arguing with classmates who don't want to take her on a camping trip because she doesn't have a tent. Despite their financial struggles, Young promises to buy her one. However, the other kids insist Dan can't come because she has no father to accompany her. This upsets Dan, and Young angrily chases the kids, but Dan stops her. Later, at work, Young vents to her colleague, Joho, about her frustrations, feeling overwhelmed by her life. Joho tries to comfort her, reminding her that she has something even better, him. He's been her friend for 8 years and genuinely cares for her. Meanwhile, Dan, standing outside a restaurant, watches a girl eating with her father. The restaurant owner asks about her family, and when she admits she has none, he threatens to call the police if she doesn't leave. Just then, Seal steps in, claiming to be her guardian, and invites her to lunch. Back at home, Young anxiously waits for Dan, and when she returns, she scolds her for being late. Dan, feeling low, says she wasn't in the mood to eat. Young realizes Dan is still hurt by her classmates' words and promises to buy her a tent and go camping with her. Dan then admits that what she really wants is a father, leaving Young at a loss for words. The next day at work, Seal visits Young and shocks her by asking if he can be her father. Confused, Young demands an explanation, and Seal clarifies that he wants to be her legal guardian. He hands her a contract, explaining that Dan wrote the terms herself after he met her at the restaurant. Despite his efforts to convince her, Young refuses, pointing out that Seal is only 5 years older than her. She worries about how society will perceive this unusual arrangement, but Seal, indifferent to others' opinions, urges her to think practically. He then shares why he's making this offer. A month ago, Seal learned from his lawyer that his grandmother left her fortune and company to him, but with a condition: he must have a daughter within 2 months, or the inheritance goes to his uncle, Sang. Seal realized that the will didn't specify the daughter had to be biological, so he decided to adopt. Back in the present, Young discusses Seal's offer with Joho, who suggests she and Dan stay at his place until she can find a new apartment. But Young declines, not wanting to impose on Joho and his mother. The next day, Young and Dan move into Seal's luxurious home, where they are amazed by its grandeur. However, Young is shocked to learn that Seal will be living there too. Before she can object, Dan expresses her delight with her new room, leaving Young no choice but to agree. Seal is pleased with her decision. We then flash back to Seal's conversation with Dan at the restaurant, where he learned she had an older sister. Despite being taken aback, Seal agrees to become her guardian too. This surprise motivates Seal to follow through with his plan. As Dan leaves for her school trip, she says goodbye to Young and Seal. Later, while working on his computer, Seal is distracted by Young's loud phone conversation. He asks her to lower her voice, needing peace to work. That night, Young checks in on Dan, who mentions Seal also called to check on her, prompting Young to thank Seal for his concern. However, when a bug appears, both Young and Seal are terrified, though they manage to deal with it. The next day, Young calls Joho and tells him about the bug incident. Joho, learning for the first time that Seal lives with her, is visibly upset. Later, Sang visits Seal, who lies, introducing Young as a maid. Hurt by this, Young withdraws. After Sang leaves, Seal apologizes, explaining that they need to be cautious around his uncle, who's trying to undermine him. He reveals that Sang is after his grandmother's fortune and will seize any opportunity to disqualify Seal from inheriting it. Young accepts the apology but remains upset. She meets Joho at a cafe, where she eats out of frustration, and he teases her about living with Seal. She brushes it off, trying to focus on the positive. That evening, Young and Joho encounter 2 parents from Dan's school, who complain that Dan hit their children during the trip. They mock Young for not having a father, angering Joho, who's about to confront them when Seal arrives and intervenes. He stands up for Young and Dan, revealing he has a recording proving the other children provoked Dan first. The parents back down, apologizing to Young before leaving. Seal then invites Young to go camping with him and Dan, deepening their bond. They grow closer, sharing personal stories, but neither confesses their feelings. A few days later, Dan returns from her trip, excited to see Seal. Sang's assistant continues to spy on them, shocked when he hears Dan call Seal Dad. That night, Young dresses up for a friend's wedding, stunning Seal with her beauty. After the wedding, Joho insists on walking Young home, as her high heels are uncomfortable. He gives her slippers he bought, and they share a light-hearted moment until Young receives a message warning her about gossip spreading online. Seeing a picture of herself with Seal, accompanied by rumors, she becomes distraught. Joho, noticing her distress, offers to take her and Dan to live with him. Seal tries to call Young, but she doesn't answer, worried that he might lose everything because of her. Joho urges her to think about herself and Dan, arguing that Seal failed to protect them. As they talk, Seal shows up, asking why she didn't answer his calls. Joho steps in, telling Seal to leave Young alone. Ignoring him, Seal tells Young he wants to live with her as her husband, not just as her guardian, giving her time to think about it. In a twist, Joho confesses his love for Young, admitting he never revealed his feelings because he couldn't offer her anything. He chose to work with her to stay close, despite knowing she didn't share his feelings. Young, touched but firm, tells Joho that she values him as a friend but loves Seal. Heartbroken, Joho wishes her happiness and encourages her to be with Seal. Young returns to Seal, who apologizes for the scandal and vows to handle it. She promises to stand by him, no matter what. In the following days, Seal uncovers evidence of Sang's embezzlement and confronts him, securing his position and inheritance. If you finished the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more movie summaries. Thanks for listening, my loves. See you in another video.